We will begin by allowing each of the candidates to introduce themselves. Maybe talk about a little bit why you're running, what your qualifications are, why you're good for the position. We'll start with Senator Saxog.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick, and I guess I'd say that I've been in the Minnesota Senate now for 14 years, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of the things that I've accomplished, and we can talk about that later. But I was born and raised in Grand Rapids, educated at Grand Rapids High School, St. Olaf College. Came back to Grand Rapids, for 37 years, was a independent insurance agent. At the end of 1993, not only was I working in the insurance business, but I ran for the Grand Rapids City Council. I ran for that until '96, when I was elected to the Task County Board, and in 2002 I was elected to the Senate. So I think my strengths have always been in jobs and economic development, particularly in forestry and forest products, and in education, which I think we, particularly in the last 4 years, have done quite well.
Thank you very much. Senator Saxog, of course, represents District 5 in the Minnesota Senate. His Republican challenger is Justin Eichhorn. Justin?
Thank you, Chuck, and thank you to you guys for being here today to put on this forum for us. It's greatly appreciated. Again, I'm Justin Eichhorn. I'm from Grand Rapids. I was born and raised in Grand Rapids. I'm one of the lucky ones of my generation that had an opportunity to stick around. I met my wife there. I also have 4 wonderful children, and that's a full-time job. My oldest is 7, the youngest is 2. So we're just at the beginning of the school-age children there. My background is mostly in business. I grew up in an outdoor store. I've had a lot of experience with that. I also served on the Grand Rapids HRA Housing and Redevelopment Authority. I also own some multifamily housing property and have been involved in other businesses throughout the Grand Rapids area. So my strong suit, I guess, would be in business. I've gotten pretty well versed in education the last couple of years with my kids coming into school, and that's another area of interest for me as well. I think there's definitely some opportunities to move Minnesota in a more positive direction, and that's something I think I can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Tomassoni represents District 6. Senator Tomassoni.
Thank you, Chuck, and thank you for having this forum. And I'd also like to just start out by thanking the people of the Iron Range for electing me to the legislature. I've been in the House of Representatives for 8 years. I was first elected in 1992, and then I've been in the Senate for the last 16 years. It's been a real pleasure representing everybody here. Senate District 6 is a very big district, as most rural districts are, and it's about 150 miles from corner to corner. And we actually have about half of Itasca County and a big chunk of St. Louis County, minus Duluth. I think we've had some good news happen over the last legislative session, in spite of some of the things that didn't happen. Things like Louisiana Pacific, it looks like it's going to come to the Iron Range and put about $400 million of production into a smart siding plant and hire about 250 full-time workers. Polymet is in the permitting to mine stage, and many of the taconite workers at Evlatec and North Shore have gone back to work, and it looks like they're going to be working for quite a while to come. And so I am running again because I know that having experience and having the ability to get things done at the Capitol are extremely important, and I look forward to talking to the voters and hoping that they'll be willing to send me back again.
Thank you very much. The Republican candidate in District 6 is Skeeter Tomczak. Mr. Tomczak.
Thank you, Chuck, and thank you, Board, for having me today. And so my name is Skeeter Tomczak. I'm running against David Tomassoni here for District 6 Senate. So I was raised in Eveleth, Minnesota, graduated from the high school there. Then I went into the military for the past 14 years, where I served over in Iraq for almost 3 years. I've been wounded twice over there, receiving 2 Purple Hearts. And while I was over there, I come back and I see Virginia, Minnesota, and the rest of the Iron Range, and what's happening to it in the last decade. And that's the reason why I'm running, is because we have a lot of problems up here and we need them to be fixed. First, our economic problems up here. The mines are struggling and they need the proper support they're getting. They're being attacked by the Metro DFL and we need someone to stand up to them. I also see the drug problem that's hitting here. It's not just Iron Range, it's everywhere else from Duluth to the cities, but we have a horrible heroin problem and an opiate problem. I just read a stat that currently opiate deaths have now passed car accident deaths on a daily basis, and we need to do something to treat that problem. And finally, the crime that's happening in these cities. When I grew up here, I never heard of any murders, and now they're happening yearly, and we need to start doing stuff to stop that from happening. And I thank you for having me here today.
Thank you very much. I'll ask Mr. Swanton to ask our first question, and Justin Acorn, you can answer first.
This year's legislative session ended without a bonding bill, without transportation funding, without an increase in local government aid, and with other failings. What needed to be done differently? How can we get past politics to serve all Minnesotans?
Well, unfortunately, that's a big frustration for both Republicans and Democrats. You had a bonding bill that was one of the most bipartisan bonding bill in decades, and it got killed over a train, basically. And I do see when I'm out door knocking, there's definitely some frustrations on both sides. As far as working more together, you know, you had, again, one of the most bipartisan bonding bills in many years. You know, I think there's a real problem with the mindset. I guess that can go for either party, but in this case, no one was obviously willing to budge one way or another. And the bonding bill was killed in the last few minutes of the session when the House thought they had a deal completed. You know, I think maybe, you know, it should have been discussed maybe a little bit ahead of time. You know, I think it was well recorded that the Republicans weren't in support of the light rail. You know, with the rest of Minnesota helping cover some of the costs of that, it certainly wasn't fair to put that burden on the rest of the state, and it certainly wasn't fair to kill that bill, which had a bunch of good stuff for the rest of the state, just over a train for just a small portion of the state's residents. And my time is up.
Thank you. Senator Thomasoni.
Well, it was unfortunate it didn't pass, but the fact of the matter is that the Senate bonding bill was actually a very good bonding bill and would have brought about $120 million to northeastern Minnesota. And the bill that was forced upon us at the last half hour of the legislative session cut out about $100 million to northeastern Minnesota, and the Republicans gave it an up or down vote on this. We did not do a conference committee. We did not have discussion on it. They were totally unwilling to compromise. And the unfortunate part about what happened was that we were of the understanding that the amendment that went on the bill in the Senate in the last half hour was acceptable to the people in the House, because that's what the Speaker had told our Senate Majority Leader. And it's been typical of what's been going on when Republicans are in control, and that is that they don't want to bond, they don't want to compromise, and they are much happier when there's gridlock than they are when things get done.
Mr. Tomzak?
With the transportation bill that happened, it's another point of people wanting to play politics instead of trying to help everyone in Minnesota. I would think that everyone that goes here, that runs for this and does what we're doing with the Senate and the House, their goal is to help every Minnesotan throughout the state. And what we're getting now is longtime people representing areas that are starting to forget about the people and start thinking about themselves. And they're playing politics instead of helping the people. And we need to start standing up and realizing that if you care about your job more than helping out the state of Minnesota, that you should no longer have your job. And we got to start not electing the people that have been in office for over 20 years. I thank them for their time and service for what they've done, but now you've lived that lifestyle for so long that you don't understand what's really going on anymore. And thank you.
Thank you very much. And Senator Saxon.
Well, the last 4 years have been very constructive down at the state legislature. The education and jobs and health care bills that have been passed have been unsurpassed, and I am sorry that because I couldn't get it done in exactly the correct manner, that tax bill wasn't passed, and I would like to have a bonding bill passed too, but let's face it, that money that we're gonna use for that is still on the bottom line, and if we don't get back in a special session by the first of the year, we'll be back to first of the year, and we'll get it done. So you had three good years. There was a hiccup here, but we're going back in January. We'll take care of it.
Very good. Our next question will be asked by Chris. And Senator Thomasoni, you can answer first, please.
One of the failings this year and for the past several years has been the lack of long-range funding plan for transportation. How do you support paying for ongoing bridge and highway maintenance? By an increase in the gas tax, a miles driven tax, cutting other things from the state budget, another strategy, a combination of things, what?
Well, let me just say that the gas tax is something that if the Republican House is in charge, it's off the table. I've always been one that has realized that people think the gas tax is a very onerous thing, but the fact of the matter is that if you put a nickel gas tax on a gallon, and we did that back in 2005, and the day it went into effect, the price at the pump went down 17 cents. Most people don't notice it because of the fluctuations back and forth of the cost of gas tax. It's necessary that the transportation has dedicated funding. There's nothing wrong with us using some general fund money, but anytime you use general fund money, you end up having to figure out if the education is being hurt, or if healthcare is being hurt, or if seniors are being hurt, or if veterans are being hurt. So it takes away from the general fund. So the fact that the gas tax is a dedicated tax is probably the best way to go, but it's easily the most controversial. And anytime we do things like and add to the other taxes, such as license taxes or anything that might have to do with purchasing a car, it's also very controversial. So we hear it from both sides, but the one thing that is very concerning is that when I hit a pothole and it costs me $350 to change my wheel bearings, it's way more expensive than a nickel gas tax.
Mr. Tomzak on transportation funding?
So when it comes to funding the transportation, the money's already there. It's accessible. The taxes are already there. They get enough funding to fix not every road every year, but we drive through construction every year. We know how much there is. There's enough tax out there to fix it if we take the time to actually pass the transportation bills to fix the roads and the bridges. Instead of wasting our time on the Southwest Rail and the other light rails in the cities that cost $22 per rider of subsidies for everyone to ride. If we stop wasting our taxpayers' monies on transit that doesn't work and is ineffective, we'll have more than enough money for transportation to fix our roads, our bridges, and everything else we drive on. So,
Thank you very much. Senator Tomzak. I'm sorry, Senator Saxon, excuse me.
Thank you.
Now that was a Freudian slip.
My apologies. I mean, you're welcome.
good practice.
Now, don't count my timing on this.
No. I have to get talked to
All
her.
right, all right.
Senator Saxon.
All right, transportation. There's very little question in my mind. We need more transportation funding. There's also very little question in my mind that we need dedicated funding, about $8 billion over 10 years. I don't even think anybody who's really looking at roads questions that. And we need to have the funding. Why I say dedicated funding is because when you get the next recession, and it's coming, we all know it's coming, you got to have the money so that that we don't have to go into the pot that's being used maybe for transportation to use that. So I've been to Wisconsin this summer. The gas cost, I think, about another 10 cents, and I think they get about another 10 cents worth of roads over there, if you ask me. We needed a gas tax. You could use an increase in license tabs. That could be part of a dedicated portion too. But the key here is a dedicated funding tax, $8 billion in 10 years.
Thank you. Mr. Acorn.
To get to your question right away, as far as a gas tax, and the others here are correct. The Republicans in general don't want a gas tax. When we've looked at gas taxes from the Democrats before, they'd like to set them to an inflationary type rate. And you see that gas tax go up and down. And if gas goes to $4 a gallon again, where are we at? There's a lot of Minnesotans that can't afford an extra 10 cents a gallon, 5 cents a gallon, 20 cents a gallon, whatever it may be. My opponent here just talked about an increase in tab fees. I pay $600 a year for my tabs right now. I remember, a lot of people liked when Governor Ventura had them at 99 bucks. Obviously, we're never going to see that again. We certainly need a dedicated funding source for roads and bridges. I mean, that's one of the core functions of state government is roads and bridges, and we've certainly gotten away from that. We've seen some good inroads with what was in the bonding bill. Unfortunately, it didn't pass. But there is some spot where we can certainly grow that, and I think that's something I can carry forward in the future if I'm elected. Time.
Thank you very much. Our next question will come from Ms. Dudley, and Mr. Tomzak, you can answer first, please.
Yet year after year, funding for rural broadband is inadequate. How big a oh my goodness. Priority, sorry, too much coffee on my end. Priority is it to you and why?
When it comes to rural broadband and the internet, it's a big priority because obviously going in the future, the more we see things happening, internet comes more and more important. When you go to a business, you'll see it sometimes when you go into a gas station or something, their internet's down, and all of a sudden they don't know what to do. So we have to have quality internet here. And when it comes to up here on the Iron Range, if you live outside the town, which the majority of people do, you suffer with, I've been to a lot of 1996 internet. It feels like dial-up when you go to their houses, and we need to start working on getting more people better internet. Without it, you suffer. And then, and to finish up on, the best way to get better at broadband up here is to try to get some technology companies to move up here to become an Iron Range of Silicon Valley instead of just mining and get some technology. And the more we get them up, the more broadband lines that they will provide for the citizens up here. And that's my time.
Thank you very much, Senator Saxon.
Thank you. Rural broadband, there's no question about it that it's what's going to make rural Minnesota compete with the rest of the state. We've got some really good broadband providers up here. Paul Bunyan out of Bemidji has done an excellent job working its way east. And we've had other investors, Iron Range Resources. Those of us that are on that board of directors think that that's a very important investment, and we've made sure that Iron Range Resources has done that. So you won't see anything but support for broadband at the state level or at Iron Range Resources by this center.
Thank you. Justin Eichhorn?
I can agree that the broadband it's definitely important. But I think we got to be careful, how it's being funded. Paul Bunyan was mentioned, and as a cooperative, they, put a lot of their own money, the money that their, customers pay per month goes back into the system. They're not getting as much state funding as some of the other ones. I think there needs to be a little bit of a balance there. I mean, how much does the state have to spend to get broadband in Timbuktu, so to speak? There are other options. There's satellite internet options. Obviously there's the dial-up, which doesn't work great for anybody, but the satellite is an option. Again, as far as the range is concerned, it's important for us to have that there. But the range isn't going to be a Silicon Valley anytime soon. We certainly need to address some of our other economic issues before we see some of these companies moving into the range. Broadband would certainly be a part of that, but again, like the Paul Bunyans, if we see it on a more private level or a cooperative level, I would certainly be in support of that and helping see that pushed forward as opposed to just the government throwing some money at it. That's my time.
Thank you. Finally, Senator Thomasoni.
Well, rural broadband is akin to the electrifying of rural Minnesota, or rural America. And getting broadband services out to rural Minnesota is very important. I hear from people all the time in the townships how they would like to start businesses and how their kids are going to school and not able to get the exact services that they need in order to bring the laptops home and to do the homework. And we've been doing a pretty good job, actually, of putting some money into broadband. Now, we've been told that in order to do it, we're going to need well over $1 billion. But in the last few years, because of budget constraints and by the ability to not be able to put as much money into it as is necessary, we did put $35 million in last year, and the year before $8 million, and the year before that $20 million. So we're getting some money involved in it, and much of the investment is coming up here. We actually got the first broadband grant up here in northern Minnesota, and Paul Bunyan was a recipient of some of the money also, and actually helped put some broadband into northern Itasca County. So we're getting there. It's a long way off, and it's all about priorities, and it's all about funding. And it's very, very easy to say we need to do things, but it's very, very hard to try and figure out where to get the money from.
Thank you very much, Vern Swan. We'll ask our next question, and Senator Saxog, your turn to answer first.
Another major responsibility of state government is education and education funding. How can education be improved in Minnesota, including closing the achievement gap? What measures would you push?
Well, education is very important in the state of Minnesota. In fact, it's what makes Minnesota a leader in not only economic development, but education in the whole United States. And I think that there's two things that we've been emphasizing lately that are particularly important in education and investing in education. One, you mentioned the achievement gap, and the way that we're going to, I think, take care of that. And there's no question about it that our minorities are having problems. But the way we're going to take care of that is with early childhood, getting kids to read by the 3rd grade. That's the key. Point number 2 in education is job training. We've got to have job training to keep our kids in rural Minnesota. And so early childhood, job training are the 2 things in education that I'm most concerned with.
Thank you. Justin Eichhorn.
I think everyone can certainly agree that education funding is very important. And one thing that I've seen as I've gotten my kids getting into school here, and the frustrations we face is one, not necessarily with funding, that is an obstacle, but with the Common Core curriculum and stuff that's put in the school, we see the state government sell out to the federal government, and the local governments, the school boards, sell out to the state in order to put in Common Core, and then they're left holding the bag to carry some of these programs along. We need some type of funding that's dedicated, that we make sure that that money goes directly to the classrooms, to the teachers, so that the teachers can run their classrooms the way they best see fit, so that the kids are taught the best way the teachers see fit. That's going to go part of closing the achievement gap, giving teachers control of their classrooms back. Also on the job training end, he was correct on that getting some of those job training skills back in at the high school level is certainly going to be important for the long term of the Iron Range, and get those people turned over to technical colleges when they get out of the high school age, and that's my time.
Thank you. Senator Tomassoni.
Well, we've invested in voluntary pre-K programs and support services like counselors to work and address teacher shortage. We prioritized improving student outcomes and to ensure students get a high quality of education. And over the past 4 years, we've invested over $1 billion in E-12 education. Senator Saxog said it very well. Getting to kids early is a big key, and for every dollar we invest in early childhood, we save $8 in future problems that might be caused as a result of kids not getting the education. We're doing some really good things here on the Iron Range. We've got the Applied Learning Institute, which is in one of our schools here, trying to get skills to kids in high school so that they can have the ability to get jobs when they get out of the high school. The EIP program is another program that we've put several $1 million into to keep technologies in our school, to teach kids with technology. And the Iron Range Engineering program is one of the biggest successes in the country, and it's being mirrored as a way to educate our kids. And so we're doing some really, really good things up here and trying to make sure that when kids get out of school, they can get a job.
Thank you. Skeeter Tomzak.
Up here on the Iron Range, when it comes to education, at the moment our biggest problem is we built too big of buildings for what we have now. The funding's down, and the maintenance cost that's going on in a lot of buildings that are going on. Example, Evelyn has a problem with multiple buildings that they have to pay for, and they're considering closing some buildings down. The fix for that is actually to bring jobs back up here and get kids back up here. The more kids we have in the classroom, the more funding each of our schools will have. When it comes to how the kids will be taught, I honestly will defer to whoever wins 6B, either Julie Sandstead or Rob Farnsworth, because they are in fact teachers. And I'd rather take a teacher's word for it than a soldier's word for it, how to teach kids, because they know better than me. So if we get people to move back up onto the Iron Range to refill these buildings once again, they'll be able to pay for themselves again. And the state will always fund education, because it is definitely the #1 priority for our youth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next question will be asked by Chris, and I believe Mr. Eichhorn, it's your turn to answer first.
Health insurance costs are skyrocketing and insurance companies are bailing, prompting some to call for dismantling MNsure. Does Minnesota need to start over with its health exchange, move on to the federal exchange, or what when it comes to the Affordable Care Act?
Well, as far as Affordable Care Act, from what I've seen and what I've seen in my own premiums, there's absolutely nothing affordable about it. I pay for a family of 6, $17,000 a year for a basic plan, $10,000 deductible. It's absolutely crazy. I see many, many stories and hear many stories where MNsure doesn't work for anybody that uses it. I'm in full support of repealing MNsure, getting rid of it, getting those people that need it to go onto the federal exchange. I wouldn't even be opposed to using the money we're spending on MNsure, which is hundreds of millions of dollars that we're in the red on that, to still go for healthcare related things. I don't have a problem having people in the low income brackets receiving some help from the state. But MNsure is clearly poorly run, and it's evident every time we see an increase and every time, the constant red tape with it. I think there's certainly, we can do better. The people of Minnesota deserve better, and to start with that, we certainly need to get rid of MNsure.
Thank you. Senator Thomasoni.
Well, I think when MNsure was passed, it was passed for all the right reasons. And I think since the Affordable Care Act was passed, that the federal subsidies that came along with it were worth it. And I think that the website is maybe something that needs some work, because I'm hearing from a lot of people that it's not easy to manage that website, and it's not easy to get to the places they need to go. We actually do get calls from people who are having problems, and when we call MNsure and ask them to deal with it on a one-on-one basis, they take care of the problems. But quite frankly, the United States is the only industrialized nation in the world that doesn't have a national health care plan. I mean, we have some national health care plans. We have Medicare, we have a veterans benefit, and we have Medicaid. And quite frankly, they are some of the lowest administrative costs of any of the plans across the country. And if we would just have national health care for everybody, I would say that, well, I know this for sure. Building a car in Canada costs $1,500 less than it does in the United States, and that's because they have national health care in Canada. So it's a pretty interesting observation, and I think that the United States should seriously consider doing something nationwide.
Thank you. Mr. Tomczak.
So when it comes to MNsure, I think the first thing I would want to do is move it to cancel and move to the federal exchange. The state auditor just released a report on unauthorized spending that MNsure has done, and that's $500 million, $500 million, has been unauthorizedly spent because of the MNsure program. And until the federal program with Obamacare is hopefully repealed at some point, we're going to have to just move to the federal exchange. We are watching people's rates skyrocket to the point where it's either health insurance or food at this point when it comes to it. Your premiums and deductibles are irate, and next year they're only going to go up more, and the trends are not going to stop. It's going to keep going up, and we have to stop that, because pretty soon the only people are going to be actually insured are the ones that are getting subsidized by us, the taxpayers. And if we go to a Canada-based system, I don't think we want super hospitals up here where you can actually get treated waiting in line. I go to the VA where I get free health care, and people are dying in lines, and I do not see that for the rest of the population.
Thank you. Senator Saxon, do away with Minsure, or how do you fix it?
Well, the price of healthcare has been going up for the last 50 years. This isn't something that's all of a sudden come about. And Obamacare and Minnesota Minsure haven't changed things all that radically. The price of healthcare, yeah, it's still going up. It's the price of healthcare. Just remember that. And why does the price of healthcare go up? Because the providers are charging more than than we can afford. The drug companies are charging more than we can afford. The insurance companies are charging more than we can afford. Tort liability is higher than it should be for insurance, and then there's all of us, and I'll take credit for it, overweight Americans who are in a bad position health-wise. So we've got some real problems, but to lower the price of healthcare, you've got to take these factors in consideration.
Thank you very much. Our next question will be asked by Classy.
Even after 10 years of scientific and environmental review, some are trying to stop the Polymet project. In the same way, Twins Metal plans to mine copper, nickel, and other precious metals that have been divisive. Where do you stand on Polymet? Where do you stand on Twin Metals?
Senator Thomasoni.
I am a big supporter of both. I have watched Polymet go through this environmental impact process for 10 years now. I was just over at the DNR's Hibbing office, and I was looking at some 38 years of research that they've been doing on what could potentially happen with some of the runoff. And quite frankly, there's a real lot of people who are sounding alarms that don't really know what the facts are. We have one of the largest copper deposits in the world that we're sitting on here. Polymet is the next generation of mining here. This little baby right here has 59 different minerals in it, and not one of them falls out of the sky. Every single one of them has to be mined, and these things are the types of minerals that we're using all over the world. And in our high-tech economy and our new age economy is using copper. There's 4.5 tons in a windmill. You have solar panels, whether they're electric cars and batteries or whatever you want to talk about. These types of minerals are being used all over the place. I would much rather mine them here safely with the laws that Minnesota has than have them come from someplace else where we don't know where the pollution's coming from or how they're doing it, or if there's 10-year-old kids actually doing the mining. So I'm totally in support of it, and I don't know if I can have some more time to talk about Twin Metals, but Twin Metals right now is nothing more than trying to drill some holes and find out exactly what's going on there. There's no project being proposed at this time.
Okay, Mr. Tomzak.
I think Senator Thomasoni was looking at my notes. He stole my entire answer, and I completely actually agree with everything he just said there. The only problem with Senator Thomasoni is that his party does not. He is fighting his own party for trying to get these mines open. And the Metro DFL, the environmentalists, keep talking about how it will ruin the world, apparently. Duluth has their downstream coalition. Apparently they don't know what the Laurentian Divide is. So I don't know why they're worried, because the containing well for Polymet is going to be north of the Laurentian Divide, which means everything's going north. So the people protesting Ely, they have a little bit more valid excuse, because at least it's running off to the boundary waters. So if we let people that don't live in this area, that just come up here for vacation, dictate how we live our life, we all might as well move as well, because this is our land, and we decide what we do with it, and we can mine responsibly and respectively and do both at the same time instead of polluting the world like China and Argentina does. So I thank you.
Thank you. Senator Saxon.
We're a natural resource-based area up here. That's what we live on, whether it happens to be our forests or our mines or our tourism. Copper, nickel, and all other precious metals that we could mine up here are all very important for our national security. We've got the greatest chemical engineers in the world. You're trying to tell me that they can't figure out what's going on with the the electrolysis of these minerals. I mean, it's just ludicrous to me. So I'm a big supporter of PolyMet and Twin Metals.
Thank you very much. Mr. Acorn?
Well, PolyMet and Twin Metals will both have my 110% support. It's obviously one of the most, it is the biggest, product that comes out of this area. And it just baffles my mind to see, the DFL and some in the DFL fighting their own party. I mean, wanting to add a plank to their platform that's completely anti-mining. Last time they were in control, they had an environmentalist in charge of the board that controlled mining policy, and that certainly isn't going to be good either if we see that come into play again. PolyMet's been going for more than 10 years on their permitting. Let's get PolyMet to work. Let's let them get going. I mean, it's done. They're going to do it in a safe manner, and like Mr. Tomasoni said, we're going to do it a heck of a lot safer here than they're going to do it pretty much anywhere else in the world. And I have a full confidence in both of those projects, and at the state level, I would do anything possible to see that helped move forward and helping cut some of the red tape to get those guys going.
Thank you very much. I'll ask Mr. Swanham to ask our next question, please. Mr. Tomzak, you can answer first.
Last winter, the legislature laid off miners and other out of work on the Iron Range. With measures to curb steel dumping now in place, and with the steel industry now seemingly rebounding, what does the Minnesota legislature still need to do to bolster the economy in northeastern Minnesota?
So to bolster the economy in northeastern Minnesota, the legislature needs to just leave us alone up here. As simple as that. At the moment, they're going after what we do up here, trying to tax our mining, say that our jobs are unsafe and that we're going to ruin the whole world. And if we are allowed to do what we do up here and mine, like we've been the last 150 years, we will prosper once again. But at this moment, I can look at HIBTAC as an example. They have 8 years right now, 8 to 10 years left to mine for what they have. They have to start their permitting process. This is for a taconite mine, not a copper nickel that everyone. They have to start theirs within the year to permit for their next one, to not have to have a shutdown in almost 10 years. That's how long the permitting process takes. And if the legislature just lets us do up here what we've been doing for hundreds of years, we'll thrive once again, but the red tape is getting in our way.
Thank you. Senator Saxon.
Well, as I said in my last comments, we're a natural resource-based economy up here. So the things we do for our natural resources are what are ultimately going to make us cook. Let's take forestry, for example. It's very important that everybody follows the DNR's example here and manages our forests in the best way possible. And we're hoping that the federal government will come along with us. We also know that the county government does a wonderful job on this. With mining, there's very little question that the price of iron and steel has been a problem for us up here, but we're working hard to add value to the product that we put out to make it the best product in the world. And I think that if we have more time, we could talk about what we're doing to that. Tourism. It's important that we continue to invest as a state in our state parks in particular. And I think we're doing that, continue to do that, and that's very important in natural resources also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Acorn.
Like everyone else, I was disappointed to see all the miners laid off, because that is the core of our economy up here, and we are a natural resource economy, but state policy certainly plays a large effect into how well those mines are able to operate and keep going. Obviously, there's a lot of issues at the federal level, which, as you guys mentioned, are being corrected, but there's still more to go. There's still things we can do at the state level to make sure that our business climate is in line, especially with neighboring states, but throughout the rest of the country, to make sure that those mines can continue to operate in the black. It was also mentioned, the timber industries up here. I would argue that one of the second most important industries up here. We need to give the timber industry 110% support as well. Excuse me. because we see the DFL party fighting against timber. First, they're going to get rid of mining, then it's going to be timber. It was mentioned that, you know, we should trust the DNR on timber alone, but let's look at how they did on the fish population at Mille Lacs. I mean, there might have to be more a part of the equation to make sure our timber industries are also protected up here as well.
But
In the last month and a half, I've been to 2 groundbreakings and 1 ribbon cutting, and those are all things that are coming as a result of activity by the legislature. The highway that's going in, Highway 53 up here, is about a $230 million investment. It's the largest investment in northeastern Minnesota, maybe in the entire state as far as the project is concerned. And we put in a Buy American Steel clause in that particular legislation so that all the steel that goes into that highway has to be American-made steel. And in fact, it is about 10 million pounds of steel are going into that particular bridge and highway. And when we had the legislation finally crafted for the extension for the people who were working in the mines, it was all all the Democrats voted for it, and all the Democrats in the Senate and the House voted for it, but 17 Republicans in the House didn't vote for it. And so, you know, some of the rhetoric that happens in regards to the Democrats and not supporting mining is more about people who are party activists than they are about people who are in the legislature. And quite frankly, we oftentimes do have to fight some of our own members, but that's common within the Republican Party also. And it's a matter of where we live. You can't mine the minerals if you don't go to where the minerals are, and that's why we have a very unique economy, and we have a very unique section of the state.
Thank you very much. Chris?
We've touched on a lot of issues here today. What do you think are the biggest issues facing the Minnesota legislature, and what are your priorities? How do you plan to tackle them?
Senator Saxog, we'll start with you, sir.
Well, I started out our whole discussion here talking about the things that I thought were the most important, and you know, that's jobs and education. And so I think that what you're going to see out of the Minnesota legislature is, and particularly when it concerns our rural legislators, both Republicans and Democrats, are making sure that we have the job training for our young people, so that we're able to train the jobs that we need in rural Minnesota, and succeed in having the people out there. And that can be done. That's not just blowing smoke. That's the real thing. The other thing is education. It was mentioned earlier that we have a huge achievement gap. We need to continue to invest in education, and we have a teacher shortage that's come on like gangbusters all of a sudden. We're going to have to invest in our teachers.
Thank you. Justin Eichhorn.
Biggest priorities, number one is going to be jobs, jobs, jobs. I mean, if something happens to our mining, our timber industries, see Bland and Paper Company in Grand Rapids struggling, what do we really have left? I mean, we have a little bit of tourism. We absolutely need to make sure that we have an economic climate, and the state sets that economic climate so businesses can come here, and businesses that are here can be successful in it. The other portion, again, I'm also on board that we need to make sure our education is fully funded, but we make sure that money goes to teachers and classrooms and not to administering the schools, like we often see that money get drained away. In our area, in Senate District 5 in Grand Rapids, we see a very high unemployment rate. And as I knock doors and talk to people throughout the district, a lot of people are concerned about the future of mining, the future of the area. And you know, I think there's definitely some opportunities for us to make Minnesota a much more business-friendly climate to grow our area again.
Thank you, Senator Tomassoni.
Well, undoubtedly, what I want to do if I'm fortunate enough to be sent back to the legislature is to pass the tax bill and the bonding bill. And I would like the bonding bill to actually be much bigger than the bonding bill that was proposed, because under the Pawlenty administration, they came up with principles of bonding, and under those particular principles, we have $3.5 billion of bonding capacity that we could do without losing our AAA rating. And I think when you talk about the governor's proposal of $1.5 billion, it was estimated that particular bill itself would create 40,000 jobs. So I think we should definitely take care of these projects. I've been in the bonding committee now for 10 years, and I can tell you that I've seen the same project over and over and over again because it doesn't get funding, and every time we go to see it, it gets more and more expensive. And we are in an economy right now where bond prices are low, interest rates are low. If there was ever a time to fix our public infrastructure, now is the time. And I would like us to go do that. But ultimately, K-12 education and higher education take up 50% of the budget, and somewhere along the way, we have to figure out a way to get a handle on the cost of tuition for our kids, because they are graduating with a mortgage, they don't have a job, and they don't have any way to pay off their college tuition. And so somewhere along the way, we got to figure out how to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Tomzak.
So if I get elected to Senate, obviously I'd want to pass the bonding bill too. That's kind of important. But things you'd like to have in those bills that help get it is, number thing I would want to do is try to lower the regulation on permits for mines. The fact that it takes a taconite mine 10 years to get a permit to mine more areas connected to the mine already. Also, PolyMet's been trying to open for almost 10 years now as well. Lower their struggles and stop the other people from the areas of the states attacking it. The Duluth City Council just did a resolution to shut down PolyMet and have it go before a judge. I think people that live in Duluth need to worry about their problems and not our problems. Because we'll take care of ours. They don't seem to be able to take care of theirs. Number two, I want to tackle the opiate addictions that is hitting the Northland up here, and it's hitting it pretty hard. We need to legislate or use IRRB money to open some treatment centers up here. Instead of making them criminals, treat them, bring them back to society, have more people to get the workforce, so jobs will come up here. Because if we don't have the people to work, they won't come. And businesses want people, and that's what they see right now is high crime and high drugs, so they're not going to come until we fix that.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the News Tribune Editorial Board, I thank the candidates again for participating in today's forum. I thank those watching at DuluthNewsTribune.com and also those in attendance. Candidates, we wish you the best of luck. A reminder that the purpose of the forum is twofold. It's part of our mission to educate voters on the candidates and on the issues, and also it's helping to inform our endorsement decisions. We're going to wrap up by offering each candidate 1.5 minutes to kind of talk about why they're maybe the best choice. And I'm going to switch up the order a little bit. I'm going to ask the Republican challenger in District 5 to go first, followed by the incumbent Senator Saxog. And then we'll do the same with District 6. So, Mr. Acorn, if you could go first, 1.5 minutes to kind of wrap things up.
All right, thank you again, Chuck, and thank you to the board here for being here again. Again, we greatly appreciate what you're doing here today to help all the candidates and the people in the community. I think I would be the best choice for Senate District 5 because like a lot of people, I've got the frustration that you see. I haven't been a politician. I haven't been, in government. I haven't been around forever in that type of situation, which is currently, kind of a good thing. We've seen people been there too long. They get complacent and lose the direction for why they've been there. And certainly I don't have that. I have a lot of care for the area. Again, I've started my life in the Grand Rapids area. I grew up there. And when it came time to move away, I chose to stay there. And I feel fortunate enough that my wife and children get to grow up in that area. And, I think I can bring some positive change and, some positive economic policies to make sure that we can continue to keep that area, grow that area, because I would love to be able to see my kids stick around when they grow up and have the same great lifestyle that we all enjoy in this part of the world. I would absolutely love to have your support. I would love to have your vote. And if I'm blessed enough to go down there, my only lobbyist would be the people of Senate District 5. So again, I would appreciate your vote this November, and I hope you have a good afternoon. God bless.
Thank you. Senator Saxog.
Well, thank you all for coming today. 4 years ago, when Northern Minnesota lost a Senate district, I ended up going head-to-head with another senator in Senate, what came to be Senate District 5. That was John Carlson. John Carlson's a good friend of mine. I happened to defeat him, and I think John would say that I've probably done a pretty good job on Senate District 5, particularly in two areas. One, education. Our education funding, in particular for our minorities, for our Native Americans, has been extremely strong. In fact, I was the author of the bill in the Senate last year. Second of all, and thanks a lot to Senator Tomassoni in his natural resources bill, we've invested in our forests. Our forests are very strong, they're very healthy, and they're ready to go on for the next period of time, and I would hope that I would earn another 4 years in way of a term. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Skeeter Tomzak, please.
I also thank you guys for having us here. Thanks to the audience for coming. The reason I'm running is because I need to see change. In the last 10 years that I've been noticing, District 6 has been going on a trend, and that trend is down. And we need to start making some changes to see that trend go back up. We are struggling up here. There's no question about it. And unless we do something to change it, we won't get any better. So I spent most of my life fighting for this country, and I'd like to be able to go to St. Paul and fight for the range, and not passive but aggressively, and be loud, and make sure everyone hears that the people up here are struggling and we need help. The way we need help is not by you coming here and telling us what to do, but we need help by you letting us do what we do. And if I get elected, you won't hear me quietly tell people what we need up here. You'll hear me speak loudly and firmly to everyone what we need up here, and we'll have a strong senator representing us in St. Paul. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Finally, Senator Tomassoni.
Well, you do have a strong senator representing you in St. Paul, just so you know. And I'm in my 16th year in the Minnesota Senate, and with seniority comes responsibility, know-how, and access. And I chair the Natural Resources, Economic Development, and Agricultural Finance Division, and I also serve on the Capital Investment, Transportation, and Finance Committees, and I'm co-chair of the LCCMR and the Aggregate Task Force and vice chair of the IRRB. I have a lot of responsibility, and I have a lot of responsibility because I've been there for a long time and because I have a history of being able to get things done. And when you talk about what we've done down in the legislature, the last few years we've stabilized the state government. We've been able to increase education funding programs for public safety for our seniors, and we've lowered property taxes, and we achieved state surpluses instead of deficits, as well as providing unemployment compensation extensions for our mine workers, and retired veterans will no longer have to pay state taxes on their pensions. I think people appreciate this kind of thing. And I brought up some of the things that we've also been able to accomplish. And the Louisiana Pacific Project, I was the chief author of all three of those bills. The PolyMet mine is now going to permitting. Our miners are going back to work in the iron industry. I was also the author of the bonding package for the largest state federal construction project on the Iron Range, which is the new Highway 53 bridge. And in terms of transportation, the Hibbing-Chisholm Airport is a key to keeping our region competitive, and we put new money into the airport. It's got a new terminal, and it's got new people coming in there. So I just want to say I feel very, very blessed to have been the senator for this area as long as I have, and I'm hoping that people will send me back, and I look forward to working with everybody again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm the only one who clapped for you.
Have to get out of here.
Thank you.
Have a great day.